May 26, 2017. Hollywood Forever Cemetery, Los Angeles. A man walks toward the microphone at a funeral. His voice, one of the most powerful in rock history, a voice capable of shattering glass and shaking stadiums, is silent today. Fragile. He introduces himself to those attending the funeral. "My name is Chester. I had the honor of being Chris's friend." Then, accompanied by a single guitar, he sings Hallelujah. The man in the casket is Chris Cornell, his close friend. The bond of godfatherhood between their families ran deep. Chester was the godfather to Chris's son. 8 days earlier, Chris had been found in a Detroit hotel room. The man who always said he was fine. We had told his story on our channel. Chester sang for him. His voice was trembling. He could barely finish the song. 64 days later, on July 20th, 2017, the phone started ringing again. The same shocking silence, the same disbelief. The same impossible news is spreading through the same circle of friends. This time, it was Chester's turn. He was found in his home in California. He was 41 years old, and the date, July 20th, was no random day. It was Chris Cornell's birthday. It was the day his closest friend would have turned 53. One hid his grief behind a smile, the other behind a scream. For 17 years, Chester Bennington stood on stages all over the world and screamed, and millions of people heard him, sang along with him, and tattooed his lyrics onto their skin. Everyone heard that scream. Almost no one realized it was real. Chester Charles Bennington was born on March 20th, 1976, in Phoenix, Arizona. His mother, Susan, was a nurse. His father, Lee, was a police detective. His father's area of expertise, the cases he worked on day in and day out, year after year, was crimes committed against children. He spoke with young victims. He prepared cases against those who had harmed them. Professionally, he was a protector of children. And while he was out there protecting other people's children, something terrible was happening to his son, at home, in his neighborhood. Starting around the age of 7, Chester was subjected to repeatedly over the years by someone older than him whom he knew and trusted. I won't go into further detail, there's no need. What matters in this story is what the abuse did to the inner world of a 7-year-old child. He didn't tell anyone. He couldn't tell anyone. Think about why a child would stay silent. He was afraid no one would believe him. He was afraid of what people would think of him. He was afraid that somehow it was his fault. So he carried that burden alone, throughout elementary school, throughout middle school. As the years passed and this situation continued, he was about 13. His father, a man who had made protecting children his profession, never knew about it. Cases like this were everywhere, but not in his own home. Years later, now an adult, Chester finally told his father the truth, and even gave the person's name. Then, Chester Bennington made a decision that revealed everything about who he was. He chose not to pursue the matter any further, because he had learned that the person who had hurt him had once been a victim himself. He looked at the man who had ruined his childhood and saw another broken child there, and he let it go. This issue has been debated countless times, whether he did the right thing or the wrong thing. This is a level of compassion most of us can't even imagine. However, compassion toward others is not the same as your own inner peace. Forgiving the person who inflicted the wound does not mean the wound will heal. Chester's parents divorced when he was 11. He stayed with his father, a man he later described as emotionally unstable during those years, working double shifts and rarely at home. And so, the child carrying an unspeakable secret now carried that secret in an empty house as well. Have you ever thought about what it means to struggle alone? Later, he said, It was a terrible time. I hated everyone in my family. I felt abandoned by my mother. I had no one to turn to. There was no one I could turn to. Don't forget that sentence. Because everything that followed, the poetry, the paintings, the music, and ultimately the cry heard by hundreds of millions of people, was born in that empty house in Phoenix. The house where a child sat alone, burdened by a secret too heavy for a child to bear. Things didn't get any better at school either. Chester was a skinny kid, and kids are cruel to those who look fragile. He was bullied, he was teased, he was pushed and shoved. The child, alone at home, was also being hurt at school, and these two worlds remained completely unaware of each other. So he sought an escape in the only way he knew how. He drew constantly, he wrote poetry, he filled his notebooks with words he couldn't say out loud, and when he reached adolescence, he found other ways to escape, the kind found in bottles and worse. These methods temporarily silence the noise for a few hours, but ultimately the noise lasts for a few hours, only to make everything even louder afterward. We've seen this pattern in every story we've told on this channel. Pain needs an outlet. If it can't locate a healthy outlet, it will seek any available opportunity. At 17, he moved back in with his mother. She realized what was going on and tried to pull him back. He was also working at a fast food restaurant. He was a skinny kid in a fast food uniform in Phoenix, Arizona. He carried a wound inside him far deeper than anyone around him could see. And then, music found him. Or he found the music. In 1993, he joined a local band in Phoenix called Gray Days, and something extraordinary happened when this quiet, wounded boy stepped up to the microphone. The sound that came out of his mouth didn't match the body it came from. The sound was immense. In a single breath, he could go from a roar that tore through his throat. And that roar, the scream that would later define an entire era of rock music, wasn't a technique he learned from a vocal coach. It was something he discovered within himself. Because for 17 years, things he'd never spoken aloud had built up inside him, and the microphone was the first place where they could safely come out. That voice was a rebellion against what he'd been through. In our fourth video, we discussed a kid from Seattle who couldn't express his pain in words, so he vented that pain through his guitar until the amplifier screamed for him. Chester didn't need a guitar. His scream came directly from his body. There was no instrument in between. Pain and sound were one and the same. Gray Days was successful locally, but Chester was restless, and by 1998, he had left the band. He was in his early 20s, newly married, working a day job, and believed his musical journey had ended before it even began. Then, in 1999, a call came from Los Angeles. A band was looking for a vocalist. They'd held dozens of auditions. They hadn't found the voice they were looking for. Chester recorded his audition performance, dropped everything, and set off for California. The band's name was Linkin Park. And in October 2000, they released their debut album, Hybrid Theory. Hybrid Theory wasn't just a success, it became the best-selling debut album of the decade. The album achieved diamond status, which means it sold over 10 million copies in the US alone and tens of millions worldwide. For an entire generation of young people, the teenagers sitting in their bedrooms in the 2000s with headphones on, that album was the voice of everything they couldn't tell their parents. And at the heart of that sound was Chester's voice. Chester had his own style, a combination of the quality of the compositions and his energetic vocals. The formula was unprecedented. His bandmate would deliver the verses in a rap style, controlled, rhythmic, and measured. And then Chester would burst in during the chorus like a dam breaking. This contrast was magical. First restraint, then an explosion. First silence, then a scream. But what the millions of young people screaming along with the song didn't fully realize was the truth. The lyrics weren't fiction. When Chester screamed that he felt something crawling under his skin, it wasn't a metaphor. It didn't merely describe what it felt like to be alive inside his body. When he screamed that he was being pushed to the edge of a cliff about his wounds that would never heal, he was reading pages from that boy's notebooks in Phoenix. He said it himself time and again in interviews. The songs were about his life, his childhood. What had happened to him? He wasn't reenacting the pain, he was conveying it. Chester found the perfect way to tell the world exactly how much he was suffering, and the world rewarded him with a Diamond Album Award. The scream was so powerful, so cathartic, and so beneficial to everyone's pain that no one stopped to see him for who he really was. A man standing in front of 20,000 people every night saying, "I'm not okay." Cornell smiled and said, "I'm fine." And everyone believed that his smile was genuine. Chester, on the other hand, screamed, "I'm not fine!" with all the strength in his lungs for 17 years, and everyone joined him. Two opposing strategies, the same result. No one heard either of them. In 2003, Meteora was released and became another massive hit. Albums followed one after another, each charting in the top 3. Over 100 million albums were sold worldwide. Chester even served as the lead singer for Stone Temple Pilots, one of the bands that had saved his life in his youth, a moment that marked the completion of a full circle for the boy from Phoenix who had listened to their tapes until they were worn out. From the outside, he had it all. Family, his 6 children whom he loved dearly. Fame, respect, a generation that idolized him. But from the inside, the battle had never ended. He was open about it. Dark thoughts, his struggles with alcohol, days when he couldn't get out of bed. In interviews, he spoke about his addiction with sincere honesty. Sometimes he even joked about it, because humor was also a way to cope. The people around him knew this struggle was real, but he had been fighting it for so long and had overcome it every time that everyone believed he would always succeed. We all know about Chester's friendship with Chris Cornell. They met through music and had become truly close. It wasn't just a professional relationship within the industry, but a family bond. Chester was the godfather to Chris's son. Their families would go on vacations together. 2 lead singers from different generations of rock music were connected by a bond deeper than the music itself. Perhaps it was because they understood each other. 2 men who turned the pain of their childhoods into sound. On May 18, 2017, Chris Cornell performed a concert in Detroit and passed away just a few hours later. In our second video, we told this story, how a warning was hidden within that calm, and how the words, "I'm fine," were the most dangerous sentence to come from his mouth. Chester was devastated. He published an open letter to his friend, and the words he chose were heartbreaking. There was joy and pain, anger and forgiveness, love and heartbreak in your voice, all at once. I guess we're all like that. 8 days later, the funeral took place, and this is the exact moment we played this video. Chester at the microphone, singing Hallelujah for his friend. His legendary voice had now become something small and fragile. His loved ones say the weeks that followed were difficult, but not hopeless. The band had released an album that was softer, more melodic, and more fragile than any they'd put out before. Critics tore the album to shreds, but Chester defended the album fiercely. A major tour was on the horizon. It was set to begin in late July and include dozens of concerts across North America. On July 19th, he was with his family. In photos from those final days, he's smiling, laughing, and fully living in the moment. On the morning of July 20th, 2017, He was found at his home in the Palos Verdes Estates neighborhood of California. He had passed away. He was 41 years old. He hadn't left a note. The tour was set to begin a week later, and that date, July 20th, was Chris Cornell's birthday, the day his friend would have turned 53. There were 64 days between them. Two of the most defining voices in modern rock. Two people who had survived broken childhoods. They had spent their entire adult lives transforming their pain into music. One in May, one in July. A smile and a scream, silenced within the same summer. Chester's oldest friends rejected the idea that one loss led to the other. One of them put it this way, with a phrase I've never been able to forget. He was just the spark, but the fire was already burning. The fire had been burning since Phoenix, since the empty house. After learning that secret, a 7-year-old boy decided to shut himself off from the world. Cornell's death didn't ignite the fire. The fire had been burning for 40 years. And in the end, it took everything with it. A child who suffered the worst possible abuse from the age of 7 and remained silent about it until adulthood. A father who protects other people's children while his son endures invisible pain. A divorce at the age of 11. An empty house. A skinny child bullied at school. A child who draws pictures and writes poems because paper is the only thing that listens to him. A young man who tries every wrong door in an attempt to escape the pain. A young man who steps up to the microphone and discovers that the scream he's been holding inside for 17 years is the most powerful voice of his generation. An album that sold 100 million copies. 6 children. A voice etched into the very fabric of an entire era, and a fire that never goes out. This fire is not fueled by fame, family, or the love of millions. Love from the outside cannot extinguish a fire burning within. It's not the fans' love, nor is it the chart rankings. These things help, they matter, but water never fully reaches the flames. For 17 years, Chester told us. He told us in every chorus. He told us in every interview. He didn't hide like Cornell did. It was the opposite of hiding. He proclaimed his pain at full volume in sold-out arenas. And yet, it wasn't enough. Because at some point along the way, that scream turned into entertainment. It became his voice. It became something to sing along to at festivals with a beer in hand. The most honest man in the rock world told the truth every night. And the truth was so polished that no one accepted it as the truth. The show is over. No encore. But what remains is the truth. Right now, tonight, somewhere, in a bedroom that resembles that house in Phoenix, there's a young person wearing headphones. And that young person has just discovered that voice, the scream that understands them. Someone saying, "I know exactly how you feel, and you're not alone," resonates deeply. That's always been the purpose of the scream, not entertainment, to be understood. A hand reaching out from the speakers. He devoted his life to ensuring no one would ever feel as alone as that 7-year-old child did. That scream is still there, and every day, somewhere, it's still saving people. Before I go, I'll say just one thing, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If any part of this story sounds familiar to you, if you're carrying a heavy burden on your shoulders right now, please don't carry it alone. In the US, you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. It's free, and someone will listen. If you're outside the US, there's a helpline in your country too. Talking isn't a sign of weakness. That's the bravest part of this story. If this story stays with you, subscribe. In every video, we take an in-depth look. Real stories. The silence behind the music. I'm the voice behind No Encore. See you in the next episode.